You all can hear me in the room, but we also have an online audience, both on YouTube and Facebook. This is also part of the Elul series, which is citywide in Los Angeles, I guess international because of the click of a button. That each night in the month of Elul, synagogues around the city are offering education in preparation for the Yamim Noraim, the High Holy Days. And we are offering Hebrew University, which is very exciting. Over the last few years, I think Justin just went out, but Justin and myself and Sinai Temple and American Friends of University, with the help of Mark and Sharon Vittergoss, I want to give a shout out to them, connected us with not only Dr. Cohen, but many amazing scholars. Dr. Mona Kori-Kasabri was here last year, and Reuven Hazan, and just really beautiful ways to not just learn about Israel, but learn about how Israel educates the future of the Jewish state as well. We are truly honored to have Dr. Cohen here with us. And with that, I'm going to give it to Barbara, who will do the official introduction. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Rabbi. Hello, I'm Barbara Natterson Horowitz, and I'm the president of the American Friends of Hebrew University Western Region Board. And I have the distinct privilege of introducing our speaker tonight, Asher Cohen. So I made a couple of notes. It's a brief introduction, but so Asher, I can call you Asher at this point, if I may,
that's my name, by the way.
has served as president of Hebrew University of Jerusalem since 2017. His field, he has a PhD in cognitive psychology, and he's known for his pioneering theoretical model that explores the limits of, I'm going to call it multitasking, putting the constraints on how much an individual can do it at one time. And that is a fitting background for the range of responsibilities that he oversees. I have had the pleasure of knowing Asher for several years now and know that he has been the driving force behind innovative academic programs, promoting research, innovation, and world-class scholarship, and creating an inclusive environment in a university that has some of the most diverse groups of students on planet Earth. Since October 7th, I know that Asher and Hebrew University have faced additional challenges, including maintaining academic continuity and flexibility, ensuring financial support, mental health, and all kinds of support for students, faculty, and the Hebrew University community. And so I know that Hebrew University is incredibly fortunate to have, as its leader, someone who has taken on these challenges so courageously and effectively, because he's an expert a world expert on multitasking. And we're just thrilled that you're here, and we want to learn more tonight.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm told, by the way, that if I hear myself, that means that the streaming goes well as well. So I'm talking to a lot more people this way. I imagine that you want to hear a little bit about what's happening in Israel, but with your permission, I'll start with the basic. And for me, the basic is the Hebrew University. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Hebrew University. We are actually the very first Zionist project in the land of Israel. In the first decade of the 20th century, the Zionist movement declared it as its first main goal. In 1918, the cornerstones for the Hebrew University were laid, and it was established in 1925, which is 23 years before the establishment of Israel itself, which, by the way, and I'll explain it in a second, I keep saying it's a good idea to establish a university before you establish a country. It has some benefits that I'll say something about it in a few minutes. But notice, 1925, next year is 2025. That means that we are getting to our centennial next year, and we are going to have a big, big celebration of the centennial of the Hebrew University in June in Jerusalem. I already invite all of you to come and participate in this big celebration. Keep it in mind, it's the very first Zionist project, 100 years in Jerusalem. I'll just say, before continuing on, that some of the founders of the Hebrew University were really well known. I'm sure you all heard about Albert Einstein. He was one of our founders. And in fact, when he died in 1955, he left all of his belongings to the Hebrew University, including some of the most precious things in the scientific and cultural world. And we are going to display it at that time in a few months from now. We also had another well-known founder called Sigmund Freud. You probably heard about him. We also had Chaim Weizmann, who later became the first president of Israel. He was another founder. The national poet, Bialik, was another founder. So as you can see, we had a good start. And in fact, the Hebrew University, I think, for the first Zionist project, is a great success. And look at it that way. In 1948, when the country was established, we were there to make Israel the modern country that it became, with our graduates and our education in a region that is not so well known for its modernity. And we are very proud of this legacy. Ever since then, we continued to be a top university, a top Israeli university. We kept our education, educated generations upon generations of students that later became productive members, productive citizens of the country. And we did a lot of additional things as well. I'll just give you a few examples. We actually run several academic programs for the army. One of them became perhaps the most well-known academic program for the army. It's called Talpiot. It was founded by us in the late 1970s, and its graduates became extremely well-known for their ability to do things in the technological world. Actually, I think we have now, over the years, some 25 faculty members that are graduates of that program. There is a Fields Medal. Fields Medal is like Nobel for mathematics. Winner, a faculty member of us from Talpiot. And they are also extremely well known in the high-tech world. So I'm being told that when on a board of a startup company there is a graduate of Talpiot, the investment goes up by 20% in that company. And we are the ones that did it, and we do it for Israel. We kept doing a lot of things for Israel, and especially we became a top-notch university. For example, over the years, we have 8 people that won the Nobel Prize. We have the Fields Medal, and we have many other numerous awards as well. Right now, in 2024, 99 years after the establishment of the university, we are in Israel in 6 different campuses, 3 of them in Jerusalem, 1 in Rehovot, 2 small campuses elsewhere. All in all, we have 1,000 faculty members and approximately 25,000 students. We are ranked consistently at the top 100 universities in the world. Now, top 100 may not sound so good unless you consider that it's among 35,000 institutions. So it's good. And I can tell you, by the way, speaking not just about the Hebrew University, but about Israel more generally, we have 3 universities in Israel in the top 100 institutions in the world. There are only 7 other countries that have the same kind of quality. Many really good countries, well-known countries, Sweden, Denmark, Holland, Spain, Italy, don't have 3 institutions in the top 100. Israel does. So we are very proud of that legacy as well. All in all, we are a top-notch university that succeeds to compete in the world of academia to produce lots of very productive graduates to do top-notch research. And I'll end the part about the university with one more interesting feature of the university. It's called innovation. For whatever reason, there is innovation in Israel, and there is even more so innovation at the Hebrew University. Over the years, our faculty members and students produced many, many inventions that later became highly impactful companies. I'll give you just two examples. One from the small to the more complicated. The small is, you eat cherry tomatoes. All the cherry tomatoes that you eat are products of the Hebrew University that essentially genetically engineered, not in an engineering way, but genetically engineered these cherry tomatoes. Before that, cherry tomatoes could last about a day. We have cherry tomatoes that last for a long time because of the Hebrew University, so we are responsible for that. That's at that scale. On the other scale, we produced many high-tech companies. Perhaps the most well-known of them is called Mobileye, which is a company, all the whistles that you hear in your car when it warns you that you may have an accident or something like that, it's all Mobileye. That's what it does. It's also in the process of trying to produce autonomous cars. And just to show you how impactful it was sold to Intel for $15 billion. So we have this innovation as part of our legacy as well. And in fact, nowadays, we moved to the next level. Now, if you will come in 2025 to celebrate with us the centennial, and you'll come to one of the three main campuses in Jerusalem, it's called the Safra campus, you'll see there a huge structure at the outskirts of that campus. It's the innovation park that we are establishing. What we do is we are building, and it's going to be finished in 2 or 3 years, and some of it will open already next year by the time you visit. We established a very large structure where we'll have numerous companies from the outside, from the high-tech, biotech, nanotech of the world, that will sit essentially at the university in order to interact with our researchers and our students and produce innovation in a different way. Normally, it's separated, the university and the outside world, and we want to combine it in such a way. So often when we refer to our university, we refer to it as tradition of innovation. Tradition, but innovation at the same time. So we are very proud of our Zionist heritage, of the fact that we have been the first Zionist project in the land of Israel. And all this now is put into perspective when we look at what happened in Israel since October 7. I should say what happened in Israel and elsewhere. Because, of course, you know what happened in October 7, the horrible terrorist attack and its consequences, and the war that Israel is now in the midst of, still in the midst of, in Gaza and unfortunately in Lebanon as well. This is a very serious test to the character of Israel. Israel never had a war that lasted that long. We are doing okay, but we all hope that the war will stop at some point and that we'll go back to normalcy. I'm not going to get into the politics of what's happening in Israel and elsewhere. All I'm saying is that I hope that eventually, at some point in the near future, we'll be able to go back to some sort of normalcy. And when we do that, to be able to resume our life as we love and we would like to see it. But there is something else that happened, of course, with that war, and that's what happens all over the world with the Jewish people, with the protests, with the, I don't know if to call it riots or whatever it is in the universities, encampments, and everything else. In some ways, all this put into question the entire Zionist project. It's also anti-Semitic, it's also anti-Jewish, but it really calls into question the very Zionist project that I believe and hope that we all cherish. And what we have to do is to do what we really are good at, to keep being a good country with a good educational system, with a good university that is looking into the future and is trying to do good things in the world. Because that's essentially, in the end, what we are doing, trying to do good things and to build the future. So if and when you come next June to Jerusalem to celebrate the centennial, with it, you will celebrate the Zionist project, and you will celebrate the hope for the future. Because if there is something that the universities are about, is the future. And among the universities, the Hebrew University is clearly about the future. And when you visit, you will see it. So thank you very much. And I'll be happy to answer questions if there may be any.
You had several students and faculty that perished on October 7. Can you say something about that?
Yeah, we had 6 students, I think, that so far unfortunately died. The latest, unfortunately, was Carmel Gat. She was a student in occupational therapy. She was one of the 6 people that were murdered, I think, 10 days ago, something like that, by Hamas, which was really a devastating thing. I used to talk about her all the time, pleading for a release, showing her pictures in different places. We know what happened. We just hope very much that the hostages will be released soon. I'll say it outright. I think that it should be the #1 goal of the country to bring back the hostages to Israel, and I hope that it will happen soon. But yes, we lost several people over there. Israel, as a country, lost many people. Many in October 7, but many hundreds after that as well. When I said that I hope the war will end soon and we'll get back to normalcy, the hope is to stop losing people, to celebrate life rather than mourning the dead.
Can you address the economic repercussions of the war with people in the reserves and being called up to the IDF, and what effect is that having on the Israelis?
Okay, so I guess I'll answer. I didn't really want to get too much into it. I wanted to be a little bit more brief so that you can ask questions. But one of the challenges that the Hebrew University and other universities in Israel faced is how to go about the academic year when we have so many students called for reserve units and missing at least part of the semester. We actually did a great deal, really a huge effort, to create an academic year that will give the opportunity, even for those that missed parts of the time, to be able to continue. And I can say humbly that we actually did a very good job, because we finished that academic year, and the dropout rate from that year, from this last year, is similar, in fact, a little bit lower than the one that we had a year before that. So we managed to keep all of them in the campus. It wasn't simple. We put huge amount of time. I, at one point, estimated that collectively, only at the Hebrew University, we invested something like 1 million additional hours in order to build a semester that can accommodate such a complicated situation. And I'm not going to go into the details, but it was complicated. Now, when it comes to the economy, that's still a question mark, because the war is still going. We haven't yet stopped to look at all the implications. There clearly are some implications for it. We don't function normally for already 11 months. So I'm sure there will be some consequences. But I'll tell you this, once the war is over and we go back to normalcy, we'll recover very quickly. And the university will be there to help make it even quicker. I'm a firm believer in that.
The Dean of Students.
Arpaz.
Arpaz.
That's okay. She sounds, when she says the name in Hebrew, as I sound when I say the names in English.
We're going to work on it. And he shared some pretty remarkable stories about the kinds of support that the university is giving to students, their families. Would you just share some of what the needs are and what the university is doing?
Yeah, well, start with that. Imagine soldiers fighting for their lives in a highly violent war in Gaza on Monday, and then on Tuesday, being in a class, listening to quantum physics or philosophy or economics. The contrast is unimaginable. So many of those students face difficulties in trying to adjust to normal life. And you can add to it that sometimes they go back to the university and to normal life and then are being called again to hell over there and then coming back. It poses a very difficult challenge. Add to it the fact that they missed some of the studies and they have to really work harder in order to catch up. We help them in all kinds of ways, but they still have to work harder. So in addition to all the academic help that we provide, and we provide a huge amount of that, we also provide emotional support, lots of it. Guy is at the top of the hierarchy in that effort to provide the emotional support. We added lots of psychologists. We created a situation where people that served in the army during this time have a priority to meet a psychologist, and a priority meaning that within days they already start seeing a psychologist. They don't have to wait. They don't have to pay. They pay, but a little bit, really a little bit, nothing at all similar to what normally they pay. And we follow them very carefully. So that's the psychological help. We also help them financially. Guy is responsible for that as well. And we try to counsel them too. It's not just a psychological help in terms of, the contrast between what they had in Gaza and what is happening in class, but it's also coming back to life, finding the energy to do that, how to prioritize your time when you have such a demand. So we have a system that created that as well. But I'll end in the end to those of you who heard Guy, there is one more component that is really important. It's called the human component. We really invested our souls in it. Guy did, for example, he's now stepping down because he's too exhausted from all that, and it's time expired. And he finished his terms, but it's taxing. And we are proud that we did that, and actually we are going to keep doing it next year as well, because this is not something that stops. We'll have at least one more year of challenges like that, and this is the time to thank you, all of you, those who helped us, because all these requires also resources. And some of those resources we got from here in a campaign called We Are One, which we hope to extend next year in order to be able to do as good a job as possible next year as well.
Curious to know the demographics of the students. How many are Palestinian versus Israeli, and then what are the relations like?
So by now you know that when I answer a question, I take it in a broader sense and I answer more than that. But I'll start with a specific answer to your question. We have about 17% of our students that are from the Arab society. The rest are primarily Jewish, but some are internationals as well. So we have a highly diverse student population. When we started the academic year, following October 7, we were concerned. We were concerned that maybe there will be tensions between the different groups. We built many programs for integration, for calmness, for finding ways to live together. But we were very surprised that there were absolutely no issues at the campus. It was as quiet as possible, quieter than normally. And for a while I was wondering, how come? Yes, I'm proud of the programs that we prepared, but I didn't really think that this was the actual answer. It helped, but it wasn't the actual answer to that. But then I remembered another incident that happened to me. I think it was in November or so, a month after October 7, I went to the south and the army arranged for me a discussion with students from the Hebrew University that were fighting in Gaza. They came near Gaza. I didn't go inside Gaza. I'm not a soldier. But they came from outside to a town near called Ofakim, and we talked. And I was at that time, of course, trying to assure to them that we are fully committed to them and so on. But what was interesting is what they told me. They told me they were fighting really horrible war. And in the breaks, when they were sitting in the rooms, they were talking about the studies at the university. That was the topic of the discussion. And then I realized that what these people need more than anything else is some sort of a hang into normalcy, into something that reminds them of normal life. And I think at a larger scale, that's what happened at the campus. What the students really wanted to do is to just be normal and not be part of it. And as a result of that, we actually had, by and large, with one or two incidents, but really, every year we have incidents, by and large, extremely quiet and productive academic year in a diverse community. I think I saw that, yeah.
You touched earlier when you opened your remarks about some of the protests that we've seen here on American campuses. Can you talk a little bit about the international context and any reverberations that you're feeling with academic boycotts? Is that an issue?
How much time do we have? I mentioned the fact that the entire Zionist project was put into question during this time, not just in Israel, but elsewhere. And to me, part of it is what we saw in the campuses and elsewhere, not just with the encampments and with the protest, but with the type of slogans that we heard. And with the fact that in some cases, some faculty members tried to organize their universities to boycott the Israeli academia. Initially, it looked ominous, by the way. It looked like all over this is the case. I don't think it's that way. I think there is a serious problem, which we saw, without a doubt, a serious problem, but it's localized in certain regions of the academia. But we have an issue. And we are concerned, we were concerned that maybe some universities will boycott us. And we organized ourselves to prevent it. So, for example, in this trip, I meet 3 university presidents. And every trip that I go now, I meet university presidents. By and large, by the way, the reception that I get is very positive and sometimes really warm, I should say. The problem, in most cases, does not lie in the management. There are some university presidents that they think that their job is just to stay out of trouble. And they don't really deal with the situation. Those university presidents usually get into trouble because of their trying to stay out of trouble. So there are cases like that, but I think management is fine. We are also trying to manage the research collaborations, and I think by and large we are successful, because in the end, I think that many of the faculty members all over the place are not for this boycott. You see those vocal, highly organized people that are for the boycott, but there are others that are not for it. And one of the things that Barbara and I just talked about briefly here is that we are trying to organize structures so that faculty members that are against the BDS can be organized around it. Because the BDS is organized. It has, for many years, or by now 20, 30 years, we didn't think much about it, but it was organizing itself. The counter BDS is not. So we are trying to find ways to organize that as well. And I'm optimistic that we'll succeed. Yes, we'll have those people that I look at them strictly. No, I'm Israeli, so I'll say it, as enemies to me, enemies of the higher education, but enemies of the Jewish people and enemies of us. But I think we can get organized against them and be successful in that as well.
Can I ask a quick follow-up about the academic boycott question? So I'm wondering at the university or in Israel in general, how these instances are being tracked. We have heard stories of invitations to conferences where the professor is suddenly ghosted. So they were going to be the keynote and then they hear nothing. Or submissions to journals where they've always gotten through peer review, they're being rejected, without even. And we've also heard that, a family member of mine who's doing her postdoc at Weitzman is very nervous about getting faculty appointments. And how is that all being kept track of, and what is the feeling among faculty about all of this?
So the problem here is that it's very difficult to track it and to know what's real and what's feared and not real. It's very difficult because here you're talking about what I'll call tacit boycott, covert, not overt boycott, where individuals decide not to do that, not to review papers, not to send letters of recommendations, to do things of that nature. There is no question that some of it exists. How much is not really known. So those that are more anxious think that it's all over the place. Some like me that are unfortunately not anxious think that it's not such a big number. We don't know. The true answer is that we don't know. We looked to see, we have one measure, because we often ask outside people to write letters of recommendations. And we look at the percentage of people that answer, and it hasn't changed so far. But that doesn't tell you the entire story either. So we try to analyze the situation as it comes and to see more and more data. And we are concerned about it. As you know, and I'll let other people know, we have a team. We established a team whose role is to actually look at what happens in universities and try to counter that if we see something that is in that direction.
the people on Zoom, Justin?
I don't think we can interact with them,
Okay.
unfortunately.
It's
So-
just streaming. But I know, I was told, and I'm talking to all those people that are streaming, that if I hear myself, that means that you hear me. And I do hear myself, people. Yeah. This is a sister of one of the people in the Division of Advancement. Please.
I can't remember the woman's name, but there's a professor who was put on administrative leave for saying in her classes that the women weren't raped on October 7th. You know who I'm talking about. I can't remember.
Do I?
And I understand that the department said it's very important for us to stress that women who've been sexually assaulted are believed.
Yeah.
We don't want to have this kind of environment. I teach at Cal State LA, and there's a professor there who says similar things. And it's the same at Hebrew U, there's academic freedom. If we can say anything we want in the classroom, how can I handle that?
Okay. So this is a good question, and I'll answer it like everything else to the best of my ability. Freedom of speech is important. But like every other important rule that we have, it has its limits. No, you cannot say what you want in class. You cannot tell one student in the class to kill another. There are limits to what you can do. And you have to weigh the importance of freedom of speech, highly, highly important, with other highly important things. For example, believing women that they tell that they were raped is a very important thing. We know statistically that this is just about in all cases true. Very, very few out of millions of cases are not true. So you have to believe that. It's another principle. Now, the issue is what happens when several important principles collide with each other. So, freedom of speech with the need to believe women that were raped. And we think that we have to balance things in a certain way. We didn't fire that woman, but we didn't allow her to teach in social school, in social work school, where this is the axiom, and unless she resigns what she said, and she did, she resigned it. And I'm happy to tell you, by the way, that she decided to retire, and we don't have to deal with her anymore.
Barbara, do you want to close this out?
Sure. Well, thank you, Asher, for being here. And we have a big weekend coming up. It's the Bel Air Fair, which is our big annual Duncan University fundraiser, AFHU. So thank you for being here, and thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you for joining for dessert reception down the hall.